The fates, often capricious in their dealings with military leaders, seemed especially unkind to Marcus Licinius Crassus, Roman commander of the Battle of Carrhae in 53 BCE. He witnessed the Parthians parade his son's severed head in front of the army on the tip of a lance. Later, Crassus walked up to a parley with his mounted enemies. That one of Rome's most influential men found himself without a horse manifested just how far his fortunes had fallen. After Crassus's assassination at the meeting, the Parthian commander degraded his remains, removing his right hand, pouring molten gold into the dead man's mouth, and sending both as trophies to the Parthian king, who with the Armenian king had agreed to a peace treaty as they were watching Euripides the Bacchae in celebration. Improvising quickly, an actor seized Crassus's head and used it as a stage prop in one of the tragedy's closing scenes. Meanwhile, Serenus staged a mock Roman triumph in a city with pro-Roman leanings, led by a prisoner resembling Crassus, dressed in women's clothes and answering to Imperator, a title bestowed on successful Roman generals. Crassus's reputation fared little better back home, given the fact that the defeat was Rome's greatest in an offensive war and that Crassus had been one of its most powerful citizens. The defeat at Carrhae commanded attention and demanded explanation. The narrative that swiftly emerged placed the blame squarely on Crassus, portraying him as a leader consumed by greed, desperate for glory, and utterly lacking in judgment. Ancient writers who often viewed history through moralistic lenses saw the disaster as an unveiling of Crassus's inherent character flaws. This perspective is tempting, as Crassus indeed held both political and military authority on the fringes of the Republic's empire, placing him in an ideal position to bring about such a defeat entirely on his own. The axiom that leadership determines military success or failure, and that a great failure indicates worse leadership, easily leads to the conclusion that Crassus belongs on the long list of military incompetence. However, this assessment risks oversimplification, a cry of despair masquerading as an explanation. As Crassus undeniably bore significant responsibility for the crushing defeat, his failure at Carrhae exposed far more than mere individual incompetence. It laid bare the inherent strengths and weaknesses of the Roman military system during the late Republic. Crassus was not an idiot, nor was he simply ruled by passions. He was, in essence, a competent, albeit ordinary, product of Rome's established approach to warfare. His true misfortune was encountering Serenus, Parthian commander of exceptional genius, against whom ordinary was decidedly not enough. Therefore, the stunning debacle of the Carrhae campaign represents a complex interplay of both individual missteps and collective systemic shortcomings. Crassus's military expedition against the Parthians in 54-53 BCE was deeply reflective of the Roman Republic's cultural attitudes towards warfare, commonly termed the Roman way of war. Three key aspects of this cultural approach profoundly influenced the campaign's trajectory. First, war and politics were inextricably linked in Republican Rome. Military glory was not merely a desirable outcome, but an indispensable prerequisite for achieving and maintaining a higher public office and accumulating power. Crassus, a man of immense wealth and political acumen, hungered for such a martial distinction to solidify his place among the Republic's elite. His early military experience, supporting Lucius Cornelius Sulla Felix, established him as an effective commander. He personally raised and funded an army, distinguishing himself by leading the right wing of Sulla's victorious forces at the Battle of the Clean Gate in 82 BCE. However, it was his command during the Third Servile War, the Spartacus War, from 73 to 71 BCE, that truly cemented his military reputation. After several Roman legions had been defeated, Crassus received a special senatorial appointment, granting him nearly unlimited authority to crush the slave rebellion. He financed thousands of troops by his own vast fortune. Crassus's upbringing, marked by hardship, instilled a grim toughness in him. As a commander, he restored army morale through uncompromising discipline, including the brutal practice of decimation, the execution of 1 in 10 men in a poorly performing unit. His operational strategy against Spartacus was sound. He consistently harassed enemy forces, engaging only when conditions favored the Roman army, such as attacking isolated groups or fighting on open ground conducive to legionary tactics. His methods culminated in a decisive victory at the Battle of the Salarius River in 71 BCE, after which he ordered thousands of prisoners crucified as a stark warning against future rebellions. These military exploits served a clear political purpose: to acquire the critical military reputation that would allow him to compete with rivals like Pompey the Great and Julius Caesar. Crassus's wealth, acquired through shrewd and often ruthless means, such as profiting from Sulla's proscriptions by purchasing property below market value, further bolstered his political influence. He invested in slaves for rental, owned mines, and became a prominent real estate mogul. While ancient sources like Plutarch accuse him solely of avarice, Crassus's ambition and drive were not unique among Roman elites, though his success in these endeavors certainly set him apart. He used his immense fortune and oratory skills to cultivate a formidable network of clients and supporters, including for a time Julius Caesar. He also sought popular favor, famously providing 3 months' sustenance and a feast for every citizen in Rome. The complex politics in the late Republic culminated in the First Triumvirate, an unofficial power-sharing alliance formed in 59 BCE between Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus. In 56 BCE, at the Conference of Luca, this alliance was renewed, with a crucial outcome for Crassus. He was granted governorship of Syria for 5 years, along with the authority to declare war and command 7 legions. For Crassus, then in his early 60s, with his last significant military service decades prior, this opportunity was exhilarating. Military success in the East became paramount to secure and advance his political standing. The second aspect of the Roman way of war impacting Crassus's campaign was Rome's expectation of aggressive, decisive action from its generals. Roman military thought dictated seizing and maintaining the initiative to force the enemy to react. There was a strong political imperative for swift and conclusive measures. Romans expected their generals to fight vigorously for victory, even if the final triumph took years. Crassus understood this need for rapid, decisive actions to maximize glory and avoid perceptions of timidity from his critics. This created a fundamental tension between ensuring a favorable outcome and maintaining a high tempo of operations. Crassus, confident in the Roman military and his own experience, sought decisive victories at what he considered the first reasonable opportunity. The third characteristic of the Roman way of war, its profound regularity, further shaped Crassus's decisions. While flexible in the hands of a truly gifted commander, the Roman military system relied heavily on standardized organization and tactics. Many Roman commanders, secure in the excellence of their system, believed their primary task was merely to bring their legions into contact with the enemy, assuming success would naturally follow. This approach often sufficed, but against tactical geniuses like Hannibal or Serenus, it proved disastrous. Such adversaries demanded agile leadership capable of adapting when Roman strengths were negated and enemy advantages maximized. The crucial decision for any Roman general was tailoring their forces' structure to the specific military threat and terrain. Overconfident commanders, however, often underestimated this, opting instead to deploy the maximum number of heavy infantry legions available and relying on them to muddle through. While legionnaires frequently succeeded, Republican wars were marked by initial defeat, followed by Roman adaptation and eventual triumph, a cycle often born from hubris, the belief that the system alone was sufficient. Crassus was not immune to this siren's call of regularity. Thus, the Roman way of war played a significant role in the outcome of Carrhae and Crassus's part in it. This indivisible link between war and politics compelled Crassus to seek military glory to contend with his political rivals, setting him on a collision course with Parthia. Once authorized to wage war, the cultural expectation for rapid and decisive action pushed him towards an early confrontation. Finally, Crassus harbored supreme confidence in the heavy, infantry-centric Roman military system. This faith, while not entirely misplaced, caused him to disregard the unique conditions of the Parthian theater, particularly the cavalry-dominated nature of his opponent. Yet, culture alone does not determine military outcomes. It merely defines the operational boundaries. Truly gifted commanders adapt with these cultural limitations, while less talented ones struggle. Ultimately, responsibility for success or failure rests with the individual commander. Crassus's path to disaster began in 56 BCE, when he and Pompey leveraged their power in Rome, securing for themselves consulships and for Caesar the renewal of his imperium in Gaul. Crassus's acquisition of Syria and 7 legions fueled his excitement for martial glory and the anticipated riches. Despite the opposition to his expedition, Crassus departed Rome brimming with confidence, largely unconcerned by Parthio's military potential. This pervasive overconfidence, rather than outright incompetence, framed his decisions throughout the campaign. His initial task, deploying his 7 legions to the theater of operation, was managed professionally. The strategic mobility of the Roman military, capable of deploying over 34,000 legionnaires and their expensive supplies across 2,400 kilometers, was effectively utilized by Crassus. Despite a costly sea journey that resulted in the loss of a great number of vessels, the attrition was not severe enough to prevent his army from beginning operations by mid-54 BCE. However, the initial phase of the campaign saw several critical errors. Crassus failed to maintain momentum after arriving in the theater, granting the Parthians valuable time to mobilize their defenses. He neglected intelligence gathering, demonstrating a fundamental misunderstanding of Parthio's military capabilities. He seemed to view the Parthians as similar to easily defeated Armenians, and despite Rome's prior operations in the region, Crassus showed no interest in gathering insights into his adversary or the military operating environment. Consequently, his decisions were driven more by Roman plans than by potential Parthian responses, leading to a crucial deficiency in auxiliary cavalry and the missile troops of Carrhae. While these intelligence failures did not cause the disaster independently, they certainly contributed to ill-formed decision-making. Crassus also failed to forge an effective political and military coalition from the Battle of Carrhae, likely due to his overconfidence in Rome, military superiority, and a distrust of existing allies. A prime example of this was his interaction with the king of Armenia. In the spring of 53 BCE, King Artabazes offered a substantial military contribution of 16,000 cavalry and 30,000 infantry, plus logistical support, but only if Crassus marched through Armenia. This route would have been slower, but it would have secured a vital alliance and bolstered Crassus's critically weak cavalry component. Instead, Crassus chose the quicker, more direct route through the western Mesopotamia from Roman Syria. This decision reflected a desire to maximize the campaigning season, capitalizing on a Parthian civil conflict, and project an image of boldness and decisiveness back in Rome. Furthermore, it indicated a reliance on Roman forces alone, perhaps a manifestation of cultural arrogance. Crassus easily defeated regional forces near Iceni, a minor success that likely amplified his conviction that the Parthian campaign would be effortless. Greek-dominated cities in western Mesopotamia readily submitted, and Crassus swiftly sacked Zenodonium, reinforcing the illusion of Roman invincibility and providing loot. However, this momentum ceased. Crassus viewed the 54 BCE operation as merely a prelude to the decisive victory the following year. This decision, while seemingly logical, his army was inexperienced, and winter quarters allowed for training and the arrival of his son Publius, with crucial cavalry reinforcements, proved to be catastrophic. Plutarch considered this failure to press on one of Crassus's greatest blunders. Crassus's initial aggressive move had caught the Parthians off guard, and pushing harder might have compelled them to sue for peace, securing his objectives and glory. Instead, he reverted to the methodological approach he had used successfully against Spartacus, fighting only with overwhelming advantage. This cautious approach, effective in previous contexts, allowed the Parthians precious time to mobilize a formidable army for the coming year. Adding to Crassus's misfortune, Mithridates III, the potential Parthian distraction and Roman ally, lost his civil war and his life during that winter. Time, indeed, waited for no man. The disaster at Carrhae on June 9th, 53 BCE, was the culmination of these individual and systemic failures. Crassus, confident in the Roman heavy infantry and operating within a cultural framework that prized aggressive, decisive action, underestimated an enemy who exploited Roman weaknesses with brilliant cavalry and missile tactics. His neglect of intelligence, his failure to secure vital alliances, and his strategic miscalculation of pausing operations ultimately sealed his fate and that of his legions. While it's tempting to label Marcus Licinius Crassus as simply an incompetent military leader, the story of Carrhae reveals a more complex truth. A commander whose previous success fostered a dangerous overconfidence, operating within a military system whose very strength bred a hubris that proved fatal when confronted with a truly adaptable and ingenious adversary. The unreflective truth in a culturally ingrained systems approach to war, rather than a dynamic approach to specific threats, led to a debacle of epic proportions. This outcome stands as a testament to the fact that, in warfare, the enemy always gets a vote.